Okay.
Yay, yay, yay.
Hey, everyone.
Hi,
Hello,
Miss Tony.
hello. Well, my clock just clicked over to 7, so I'm just gonna jump in.
Go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Kate Warner. I'm your interim director, and I'm instead of batting cleanup like I usually do for our Suzi salons, I'm gonna talk a little bit here at the top, hand it over to the incredible Brenda Porter, who curates all of these salons for us, and then she will introduce our illustrious stage manager guests this evening. It is so good to see you all. Welcome to our first Suzi salon of 2023. So just a quick overview. Brenda and I were talking, and we were having some really interesting conversations with folks who were suggesting some areas for us to do Suzi salons. Those of you who've been coming for a while now know that we've been able to do more of these because we've been on Zoom, so that's actually been really helpful. And they've been a wonderful, enlightening opportunity to do a deeper dive into a particular area of putting together theater. And we've spent a lot of time, especially talking about what a collaborative process putting together theater is. And so even though we may, delve into one area in particular, we're also trying to share a little bit more about how that one particular area interacts and touches all the other areas of production or design or acting. And I would say if we had to pick one area of the theater, of a production that touched everything and made everything else run, it would be stage management. So I'm very excited that we've got these folks here this evening to share their wisdom and insights with you. Part of what we're doing about this, it is educational. We want all of our interested parties and members and judges to know more about each area of the theater, and especially how the collaboration, where we can pull out nuances of collaboration. And sometimes it's different at different theaters, and we'll talk about that a little later as well. These first 4 topics, the first 4 Suzi salons this year, we're actually teasing out areas that we don't currently adjudicate. So that seems a little odd, but again, these are 4 very important areas, and we just don't have a particular way right now that we judge, evaluate, and score. So this is meant to be a very nuanced conversation for you all, and I hope that you have some great questions for our guests. We're recording, we'll be on here for just a little bit over an hour, and I now turn it over to you, Brenda Porter. I'm going to go off camera because I'm doing double duty. But if anyone has an opportunity just to keep an eye on the chat, just in case Brenda can't see the chat while she's also answering questions, if someone doesn't mind keeping an eye on that for us, we appreciate it. And thanks for joining us. Ms. Porter.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Kate. I'm excited for our guests to share their information with us today. Stage management is something that I'm just in awe of. It's something that I could never do, even though I am often mistaken for Lark. I cannot take the credit that she, of all the things she does. I've put together a little, let me introduce. So we have with us this evening 3 very gifted, talented, capable, organized, wonderful stage managers. I will give them in alphabetical order. Liz Campbell. Let me see if I can pin you or something at the same time.
Hi.
I don't know if I can do that or not. Liz Campbell. Emma, no, Lark, Hackshaw. I did say alphabetical order, not order of my screen. And Emma Palmer, you hyphen, okay, Emma Palmer McVeigh. And there we go. Okay. So these ladies are going to share with us their wisdom. They can talk about themselves as well as, but mostly about the job that they do. And I've asked them to speak particularly about what happens pre-production, rehearsals, during the show, post-production. So those are the areas. And I've put together a little slide presentation that can help us a little understand, and we'll stop and have them talk in the process of it. So please indulge my inability to be technical. As soon, oops. Nope. Okay, oops. Okay, come on. We are going to start there. Okay. I have share screen here. And so, I thought this was very apropos, because before I can get things as a director, before I can get things out of my mouth, my stage manager has gotten it done. A good stage manager. I found this chart online, and I was asking the stage managers earlier if they thought it was very reflective of the hierarchy and the way that things go. And there was a discussion around it. And I decided to leave the slide in so that they could talk a little bit about where they see differences in their jobs. So I'm going to ask my 3 stage managers to just share a little. I'll keep this up for a little while so people can see. As it is now, you see that the stage manager and the front of house are on the same line, and then up under the stage manager is everything. So I'm going to stop our slide for just a moment and let them talk. No, I'll leave it up so they can talk around it. So ladies.
Sure, I'll take the first stab at it, and Liz and Lark, just let me know if you disagree or agree. But what we talked about a little bit, what's really missing from this chart here is the element of a production manager. Traditionally, in my experience, all of the design team is really reporting to the production manager, and the stage manager steps in to help work with and collaborate with the designers, but there's never a scenario in which a light designer is reporting to me as their direct manager. The sound designer does not report to me. However, what parts of the team do report to me are the assistant stage managers, the stage crew, the run crew. But again, a lot of this can change based on the theater you're at. And at the end of the day, most places I work, I am a contractor. So even these ASMs and the run crew, I'm not cutting their check. So at the end of the day, I'm not their boss with a capital B, but in the room, they are looking to me for direction. Would you say that's fair, Liz and Lark?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's true. But I take exception to the fact that they do answer to us. The run crew does answer to us, because ultimately, if the show goes as it should, we've done our jobs. If something happens, then it's our fault. And the first person we go to is the run crew to find out what happened, because we are directly responsible and are held accountable for what went wrong. We have to explain to the producer what went wrong, why it went wrong, but more than that, how it won't go wrong again and how it was corrected.
Yeah. I would agree with that for sure. I just meant we don't cut their checks, if you will. But at the end of the day, responsible for the actions in the room.
Yes.
So
Something that I think
sorry.
is,
No,
I
wait,
was just
hold
gonna
on.
say-
What, Liz?
something that I think is missing from this slide completely is our relationship to the actors,
Mhm.
which is honestly longer than the run crew, and with the exception of other like assistant stage managers, they're primarily the people that we're paying attention to.
And
So
the
I
director
would,
is the
and the
same.
director, I would say that the director and the actors being missing from this is, I don't know.
Paramount.
confusing. Yeah.
Paramount.
Because we absolutely like our daily job is to schedule and
Mhm.
make sure that the actors have what they need to do their job safely, and make sure the director has what they need,
Mhm.
and communicate the director to the designers. So that entire relationship is extremely important to what we do.
Absolutely. A lot of advocacy there for all of those parties you just mentioned.
If an actor isn't happy, we're not going to have a good show. We first and foremost, stage managers have to make sure that we don't have to be friends with the actors, but we have to be friends with the actors. You know what I mean? We have to take care of them, because if we don't take care of them, we're not going to have a good show.
They have to feel listened to, and they have to feel safe. They need to trust us, and it's our responsibility to make sure that they feel safe,
Yes.
so that people aren't going on stage thinking they're gonna fall off a platform or bleed into their shoes because they're too small and no one's listening. Like,
Yeah. I work a lot with apprentices and college students at the different places that I stage manage. And what I tell them a lot when they're stage management specific apprentices is that the people behind the table, stage management, ASMs, etc., the minute they lose their cool in an unprofessional way, the minute that they disregard a valid concern for safety or a question, then everyone in the room suddenly feels unsafe, because we're the ones really setting that precedent. We're the ones keeping an even keel. So I kind of, I don't love, people joke a lot about don't piss off the stage manager. And I don't love those jokes, because our job is not to be this reactive presence. Our job is actually to be this soothing, cohesive presence that keeps the process moving forward safely, so everyone feels taken care of.
yeah, we're not here to be in control of people. We are here to make sure that they're taken care of, to advocate.
Yeah.
So I started this with that, but what I failed to ask is, for those people who don't know what a stage manager does, what is a stage?
God, we are so many things.
Yeah.
We are so many things. We're actually the center of communication and the funnel through which everything is happening for the entire production. Once a show has opened, everything upstage of the proscenium march is controlled by the stage manager. We rehearse the show. We are the conduit by which everything runs. We are the safekeepers. We have the responsibility of making sure that the actors feel safe or in a safe space. And between the act, because there's two different divisions. There's the administration, and then there's the actors. And we really have to do that fine line between the two of them, to listen to administration and what they want, but to make sure because it's actually our show. Because once we open and all those people go away, the actors are depending 100% on us. And we have to take care of them. We nurture them. We become their psychiatrists. We become their mentors. We're their caregivers. We reassure them. We help them. We make sure the show goes up. We make sure go ahead, Liz, pick it up from there.
I'm just like, I feel like we're shepherds fundamentally. Not only are we trying to get everybody to go in the right places at all of the right times, but we need to make sure that they're okay and that they're eating. Sometimes literally.
Yeah.
Sometimes I literally have to bring people food to remind them to eat. Like, it's on top of also making sure that we don't use too many Cokes because we only have 6 to get us through the end of the week. And, so we're simultaneously looking out for the people who are doing the play as actors, but also the people who are backstage trying to make sure that they have enough time to reset a prop or eat lunch between shows. And then at the same time, trying to make sure that we're taking care of the theater and what they need for us to do, and starting on time and making sure intermission is the right amount, because otherwise the patrons are going to complain. And
we're the translators of all of this. And then we also, what Lark said, the show is ours once it opens, meaning it's also our responsibility to uphold the integrity of the show that was rehearsed, which sometimes that's even the more, those have been some of my more challenging conversations, is when actors, decide they want to add a bit after the show is open, and you have to kind of gently but firmly, keep that from happening, because the show was rehearsed with the director in the room and the director's vision, and it is our responsibility for a myriad of reasons, but also just safety, that the integrity of that show is upheld.
I think we can safely say that all technical, artistic, safety, health, timing, and personality issues are in our hands. And we have to take care of all of that. We're nurses and nursemaids and mothers and nurses and teachers and, psychologists and psychiatrists. And we're their everything.
So Tony,
with love.
with love. Tony
With love.
Rivers says, is it correct to say that a stage manager is a liaison between all the parties who make a production possible?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to go back to our slideshow. Now, I know that all of that comes with its challenges, as this next slide will tell us, I think, if it goes. So, it has its difficulties, I know, and it also has probably its joys, but it starts long before you get to the actors. I'm going to ask Miss Lark Hackshaw to talk a little bit about what happens for about 5 minutes or so, about what happens pre-production. What is your job pre-production?
Okay. So in the position, in my current position, I've gotten to the point where now I have the right to hire my assistant stage manager because I'm working on Broadway. So finally, I have been given that right that I can hire my own crew, my own team. But in pre-production, there's so much to do. Stage management has a lot of paperwork involved with pre-production. there's schedules to be done, and sign-ins, and scripts, and consultations with directors and designers. There's welcome letters to write. There's conversations to have with all of the cast members. There's a conversation to be had with the director. You know, how many hours do you want to rehearse? You know, what's the span of our rehearsal days? There are rules for everything. There's rule books that we all have to know and abide by. For the Alliance, it's we're a LORT B contract. For off-Broadway, there's another off-Broadway contract. When I do Broadway, I'm on a production contract. So there's rules that you have to abide by. How many hours a day can you rehearse? How many hours can you have before you have to? Some rules are universal. You know, how much time can go by before a break, those kind of things. But there are also rules, and I also have to learn the IATSE rules because I deal with union houses. So I now have to get into music rules, and I have to get into IATSE stage crew rules, which is very interesting. And so I have to work with production managers. You work with the properties person. If you're doing a musical, you know, you have to have conversations with the choreographer. You know, you have to figure out how many hours the director wants for music, how many hours you want to do for choreography. You know, there's fittings that have to be considered and factored in there. You know, are you going to do that before rehearsals start, or you're going to do that during the course of rehearsals, that 3 or 4 week period during rehearsals? Usually it's a combination, you know, of both. There's scripts to be read. There's scripts to be produced. Thank God now we just send that out, and they're done off premises, and then they come back to us. There's calendars to be done. I mean, it's just a whole myriad of things in the pre-production. In New York, here in New York, we are given, for a play, I'm given a week to do pre-production. For a musical, I'm given 2 weeks to do pre-production. And my assistant usually comes on, you know, the second week. You have,
would you please mute?
There's meetings to be discussed. There are production meetings that you have to have with everybody that's on board. You get a ground plan. You have to know from the production manager and your production team what the set is. You know, you have to learn how to read a ground plan, which is done in school, and you have to tape out we call it taping out the floor. So you can you can put on the floor the actual set. You have to tape that out, because when you first go into the rehearsal hall, you're just in the hall without a set. You don't usually get to a set until 3 or 4 or 5 weeks in to rehearsals. You have to make sure that you have money for petty cash. You have to know who nowadays you have to know who your COVID person is. Now you have to make sure that you have COVID testing. You have to make sure that, you know, well, here in New York, there's a couple of places that we go a couple of times a week where each show can go and you test per show. I don't know what it is in Atlanta anymore. I just know what we do here in New York.
At-home tests.
Huh?
At-home tests with a Google form upload twice a week.
Oh, you do?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
But you know, all
If-
of us do the same thing for pre-production. Liz, Emily, you want to add anything to that?
I think you covered most of it, honestly. I
Yeah.
can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
I'm sitting here
Okay,
making a to-do list.
We're gonna take
Yeah,
a look
right.
back. There's some questions, but I'm gonna ask the question. We're gonna wait for the questions until the end to make sure that we have enough time for everyone to talk about the things that we have. So, thank you, Lark, for sharing that with us. We have, they say, I found this online as well. I'm just, the stage manager's vocabulary, places, whose cell phone is that? Just in case I'm hit by a bus, and we're on a 15. Of course I have anything. Do you need an ice pack? That's a design choice you'll have to ask. Warning, stand by, go. That clip light is shining right in my eyes. It's on my list. Shh, please, thank you. Oh, I'm not sure if that's all true. I'm a stage manager. I can fix stupid, but I can't fix stupid, but I can fix what stupid does. Not that actors are at all stupid, but I would like to ask Emma to talk a little bit about what happens once the actors get there and now we are into rehearsal.
Of course. Liz and I were joking about how neither of us had lots of pictures of us stage managing professionally. I think that was a picture an actor took of me while I was fixing a set piece during Sweeney Todd here in Atlanta. So yes, rehearsal starts. You've done everything that Lark just spoke about. You have a rehearsal schedule. You get into rehearsal the first day. Usually if it's a straight play, that starts with a read through at the table and some table work, which is a chance to really pick apart the script, get to know each other, the director, what his vision is, and dig into the text. At least when I've worked on musicals, usually you start with music rehearsal, and once you've gone through the whole libretto, you then do a read sing through. And at this point, it's the daily management, kind of what all three of us talked about at when we brought up that org chart of being that conduit of information between actors, the management and direction team, and the design team. So it's maintaining the schedule. It's making sure we stay on schedule. It's keeping choreographers and directors and music directors honest about the time they need to accomplish what they want to accomplish with the music or the choreography. And then it's bringing in and managing and scheduling the additional needs of a show. The show may have some fight choreography, so you need to bring in a fight choreographer. And that means there also needs to be a fight captain appointed. If it's a musical with a lot of dancing, there's usually going to be a dance captain that you have to identify. If there's intimacy, you need to bring in an intimacy choreographer. It's working that schedule as well. And then it's also troubleshooting. You know, you may be in the middle of a rehearsal process and something comes up that will seriously impact not only the actors, but the design of a set as well. A good example I thought of was with Sweeney Todd as well. Of course, everyone knows they go down the trap door after they are murdered by Sweeney Todd. But we had an actor who had a serious knee injury that hadn't happened at the time of their casting. So we had to figure out how they were going to be murdered and taken off stage without being seen, but they could not go through the trap door. So that's a continuous kind of ideation process with the design team while also keeping in mind the actors' needs and safety. On top of that, you keep a book. So every stage manager has their script and you're taking down the blocking. You're also taking down any choreography. If there's choreography, you start noting and tracking where props need to be preset backstage and what that transition plot, as we so call it, entails. Sometimes that's as simple as a couple prop handoffs if it's a smaller show. If it's a larger show with multiple sets, that's as complicated as a whole deck transition plot, which is bringing in and taking off large set pieces, quick changes, Again, properties where they need to be, and usually you have the help of an assistant stage manager and a run crew, but in the early days, it may just be you. It may just be you and an ASM. So it's really starting to have all of that information in one central repository, which is the stage manager's brain and book and paperwork, so that going into tech, you can put all of these elements together as smoothly as possible. And once you're in tech, that's the whole other level of, up until this point, you've maybe been working with props, rehearsal props, you've had the taped out set, but at this point you're layering in light cues, you're layering in sound cues, you have a full band perhaps now, rather than just the music director and a piano. You're layering in haze, which if you're on an equity or SPT equity contract, you have to have the haze tested to make sure that it's safe. The production manager usually helps with that, but there's paperwork that I, as the stage manager, have to submit to equity confirming that that happened. You also elect an equity deputy at the very beginning of the process, all the equity cast members, and they're the liaison between the actors and equity directly, but usually the stage manager and that deputy are working together to make sure equity hours are being tracked. If there's overtime, that they're being compensated fairly. If an equity actor decides, I want to provide my own wig or I want to provide my own shoes, you have to track that because they get financial compensation for that. So it's really spinning a lot of plates and keeping a lot of things at top of mind at the same time. So that organization is really imperative. You cannot be a stage manager without those organizational skills and people skills. You're talking to people from totally different parts of the theatrical world and bringing it together. Yeah. So then once we're in tech, that's really when everything is layered in, and that's when the show becomes what people see when they come and sit in the audience. Did I miss anything? That felt like a stream of consciousness.
Talk about a raised set.
Pardon?
Talk about a raked set.
Oh yes, raked sets. So, there's a whole other level of complication when, there is a set involving, a revolve, or there is something where in Urinetown, someone falls off of the second level onto a crash pad. So there's some really complicated and detailed stunt work, basically, that we're doing with a fight choreographer. You have to make sure that a safety walk happens with the production manager. And if there have been times where I was not able in good conscience to let us move onto the set because there were safety concerns to the point that I would not allow actors to go on it. There are OSHA, oh my goodness, I haven't had enough coffee today, guidelines that sets have to meet for safety. The same guidelines that construction workers have to meet, but these sets are being walked on, danced on, jumped off of, and they need to work for these actors in a manner that is going to support their safety so that they can do 8 shows a week. And I personally don't ask my actors to do anything that I am not willing to do myself. So Sweeney Todd, I went through that trap door the first time we worked it, and we found out the hard way that there was a certain way that the door needed to be paged open. And this may be TMI, but I had a bar-shaped bruise on my butt because they didn't page the door back far enough. And I'm certainly glad that I did it, because at the time I was 24 and was fine. But some of our actors, especially the one with a knee issue, that could have been potentially career ending for them to go through that sort of, to have something happen in that moment. And that's one of the situations where we were like, fall back and punt. We're going to do another run through in the rehearsal space while y'all figure out this problem with the set.
So just for time wise, because I want to be able to
Yeah,
go to
yeah.
questions. Oh no, you guys are great. So thank you for sharing some of the things that happened. And I say some because I know there's still more and more. Um, I think I said, I put this on the flyer. If at first you don't succeed, try doing what the stage manager told you to do in the first place. Warning, I know this one does not sit well with you, but pissing off your stage manager will be hazardous to your health. And I'm going to ask Liz, I got your name almost off of the doggone it. Liz, to
good.
talk to us a little bit about what happens. Now we've gone through tech and the show is opening. What happens? We already know that you can't, sorry, you don't get a chance to sit back and just have a martini. So talk to us about what happens then.
Yeah, sadly, no martinis to be had. So it's opening. It's opening performance in theory. The night of, or almost always night of opening, this show is what we call frozen. So the director, all the designers, producers, in theory, everyone has said, this is the show we want people to see. This is it. This is what we're doing. So in that moment, transfer of power isn't exactly the right word, but it's not the wrong word, goes from the director to us. So the director goes home and does whatever they're doing next, has a lovely time someplace else.
The director
And
gets a martini.
yeah, the director gets lots of martinis. The designers get to, give everyone hugs, bourbon, and then go on a plane. And it's you and your team. It's the stage management team and the actors and the run crew. And now it's yours. So we still schedule. We're still constantly scheduling things. But we come in and we facilitate setting up the stage, making sure that all of the props are there, making sure that all of the scenery is working, making sure that if someone's going to press this button, the house is going to move when it's supposed to. We also need to make sure that everyone shows up. You'd think that would be an easier thing than it is, but it sometimes is the struggle. Making sure they show up and on time is its own thing. And then theoretically, everyone has shown up and everyone is going to do the play. And we go up to the booth and we grab our book that has all of the cues written in it. And so you've got this script and the entire, however you write it, because we all do it a little differently, but like for me, the entire right column is just full of things that I need to say for the next 2 hours. Every single thing that happens on stage, every time a light changes, anytime you hear a sound, anytime a house moves, anytime something flies in randomly, it's not random. Every single time any of that happens, we are saying go. And someone is hitting a button, somebody's pulling a rope, somebody's doing something because we tell them to, when we tell them to. So to Lark's point earlier, if something goes wrong, if we are thrown into a darkness cue 2 beats too early, ultimately it's going to be our fault. Whether or not we called it right, whether or not they hit the button accidentally or double punched, which is a thing that happens. So we can't just like, I'm gonna watch the play. You can't. I mean, that's the worst thing that happens when you get really interested in the play you're watching, because then you miss cues. But it's constantly watching to make sure, okay, right when they're about to cross, I have to call this light cue so that the light moves with them. Or on this beat, this happens because that's the design. Whether you agree with the design or not, you still have to call it where it was designed. So just like the actors can't necessarily be like, you know what, I want to try this thing. We also cannot be like, you know what I think would look better? Doesn't matter. So it is our job to keep ourselves, to keep the run crew, to keep the actors doing the same play.
Liz,
that-
can you talk about understudy rehearsals, honey?
I literally was about to say that. And if an emergency happens.
And then if an emergency, have you ever stopped a show? Come on, girl, you have talk
Look,
about that.
Like Emma and I both can tell stories about what happens in emergencies.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's true. Okay, so let me just use this year's Christmas Carol as a wonderful example of how I think we only did the play like 4 times with the entire cast in it. Every day was a different adventure of who's sick, who's not here, who has morning sickness. Like, we had all the things happening, not just COVID. Actually, COVID was like the least of the problems. The flu gets you every time. So it is our job also as stage management to make sure that the lovely understudies, who are often extremely underpaid, and usually much younger than the people that they are covering, are able to just step in and do the play without the 3 to 4 weeks of rehearsal that the actors had. They get like 2 or 3 understudy rehearsals, depending on your schedule and how early you have to call them in. Because lately it's been bringing in understudies before they even have a rehearsal. Now that's if you are working in a place that has understudies. Even the highest paying theater in this town does not have a 1-to-1 understudy ratio. So for a show with 5 actors that I did this summer, we had 3 understudies. And 2 of the female identifying cast members were sick at the same time. So we did a concert version, and the music director and I sang their parts. Yeah, it was real fun. The crew got to wear the giant books though, and that was kind of cool. And then I know there's a Sweeney Todd story as much as there's a ragtime story.
Oh yeah, we call it the Kevin Harry curse.
Yep.
Because he was in both shows, and so was Daniel Burns. So
there you go.
Yeah, so during Sweeney Todd, I know that comes up a lot, but it is one of the more technically challenging shows out there. Our lovely Mrs. Lovett closing weekend was her voice was gone, and our director just happened to attend the show that night. He was also the artistic director of the theater, and we both could tell, like, if she kept singing, she was going to damage her instrument. And Freddie Ashley sat me down and said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you feel about going on as Miss Levitt tomorrow night? Because we had no understudies at that point. And at the time I was like, this actress is that's never gonna happen. So like a 7. Sure enough, the next night I'm in the costume and I went on with a 3-hour put-in rehearsal as Miss Levitt. And Liz has a very similar story.
You got a put-in rehearsal.
I know. I was lucky.
I was doing ragtime, and it was closing weekend, and we were sold out. And the woman playing Mother was hospitalized overnight and was unresponsive, actually, when Saturday morning rolled around. Yeah. So I got a phone call from the artistic director being like, the entire creative team was male, no understudies. He's like, all right, so we can't cancel because we're sold out. At the time I was, 20 something and didn't understand that wasn't my problem. And yeah, I'm smarter now that I'm older.
Yeah, same. That was what was told to me as well. It was closing weekend, sold out, can't reschedule.
Yeah. Exactly. And he was like, well, we can have someone go on stage. And it was not the backstage was not super safe, it was a very complicated backstage, and I would have been very nervous about somebody being back there that had never been back. So
okay, but let us also say that in this world today, knowing what we know, and
this would not happen.
Stage managers are not allowed to understudy. Stage managers can never go on. Stage managers need to call the show. Assistant stage managers can go on in a pinch, but they, there will never be a show on Broadway that I do where they say, can you go on? And yes, I will know all the lines, but who's going to call my show? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's
Right.
never, ever, ever in professional world is going to happen. Now we have shut down shows. We did a soldier's play and chicken and biscuits because we exceeded, we broke coverage is what it's called. You break coverage. If you have one actor that covers two roles and both of those actors get sick or come with COVID, then you have no one to cover them. And so you have to cancel the show and for the next 5 days or something like that. We've had that. I had that on a soldier's play, and I've had that with chicken and biscuits, and I had that for Colored Girls. So 3 of my Broadway shows, we had to cut it down because we broke coverage. But there will never be a time in professional theater that a stage manager can go on because we're just not allowed to.
Agreed. And should never have happened in the first place.
Yeah, but when we're
Anyway.
young and we don't know, when
Well,
we're young
and,
and we don't know. Right.
And singing Mother in ragtime was also not like the worst thing ever. 15-year-old me was thrilled.
15-year-old me was like, this is the life. But
Right.
it would not ever happen, I would say, post-COVID in professional theater in Atlanta. This is not ever going to be a situation again. Now, since then, I've had, head over heels where I think at one point we had 4 understudies on stage and swings in every swing role possible. And thankfully we didn't break coverage in that situation. But I was like, there are more understudies and swings on stage than there are main regular cast members. And that brings its own set of challenges, and calming stress and balancing personalities and stuff like that. So
Well, and can we talk about how like we don't have understudies and how
yeah,
we spend half
yeah.
of our job making sure everybody else has coverage, and then it's a struggle to actually get sick ourselves.
Hell, a director
would
has
like-
gone on. Kenny Leon went on one
Oh.
night. Kenny Leon
For,
went on one night. He says, I'm not canceling the show. He had the book in his hand, the script in his hand, and he went on. Like a director can go on, but a stage manager can't go on. Who's gonna call the show?
I called in the designer.
I would like to offer, because we're like about 12 minutes before we end, I would like to give those that are here an opportunity to ask questions. I have a couple of questions that are in the chat that I will address and offer them up to you folks. And then if there's others that come up, feel free to raise a hand or anything like that, and ask those questions. We maybe about 7 minutes or so of questions before we have to 7 to 10 minutes. We'll see how it goes. So one question is, does stage managers work at one theater or at several theaters?
Several.
Mm-hmm.
There are some theaters that will have a resident stage manager, where they're on full-time staff. I find that to be few and far between, at least here in Atlanta.
Even if you are a resident stage manager in Atlanta, it's still not always enough work to keep you employed for a whole season. So like I am the resident stage manager at the Alliance, and I still freelance all the time.
Yeah, and I have a day job and freelance.
Yeah, I was with the Alliance for 30 seasons, and then I left and came to New York. So here, I don't work for theaters. You don't work for theaters here. You work for shows here with different general managers. And so you work differently. But Liz and I were peers, and we worked together at the Alliance for a number of years. But, after 30 seasons, for me, it was time to go.
Okay, so the next question is, does a stage manager have a budget? Do they get to decide whether or not, hold on, that just left. Do they get to decide whether or not they can hire a fight choreographer or intimacy coach or etc.?
So we have, if we have a budget at all, it's for like tissues and coffee. First aid, maybe. But as far as fight choreographers, etc., we help coordinate when they come in, but they get hired by the producing
Management.
house. Management, yeah.
Management. They get hired by management.
Yeah.
So speaking of management, the next question is production manager versus stage manager. Can you please explain the difference simply?
A doggo. Oh my goodness. Samson, sorry.
We're,
My
th-
cat
we're
is
all
knocking
we're having dog cat moments.
Yeah.
Okay. So once again, the question is production manager versus stage manager. Can you explain the difference simply?
A production manager is responsible for putting together all of the technical aspects of the show. They coordinate with the house and decide when they do the schedule, when the lights are going to be hung, when the sound is going to be installed. They do the overall technical scheduling. When the rigging is going to be done, all of that. They take care of all of that other technical stuff. The stage manager doesn't have to do that.
And oftentimes the production manager is someone who is a staff member for the whole season. Probably different in New York, but in Atlanta, it's like the production managers are in charge of everything that happens in the theater, whereas the stage manager is just in charge of that show.
Yeah.
And we
the
kind of go with
production-
the actors.
Yeah, the production manager rarely has interaction with the actors, except for maybe, some theaters in Atlanta, the production manager will hand out contracts, but the daily interaction with actors is the stage manager.
Okay. How did you learn how to do your job?
I started doing it some in undergrad, but when I moved back to Atlanta, I had just recently switched my focus from performance to management near the end of my college career. So when I moved back to Atlanta, I actually applied to the college internship, even though I had graduated at Synchronicity Theater. And I did that for a couple shows. And then kind of my whole career can be traced back to that first gig I got at Synchro, which it's kind of come full circle because now I'm on their board, which I love. But it really just kind of stacked from there. I did a couple seasons where I was ASMing. I got several opportunities to be a kind of professional equity ASM in houses like Emory. And honestly, I took my learnings from stage managers that I worked under to the point where I felt like I could go bigger. And I just kind of scaled, my first stage management gigs, I was doing some children's theater. So a little bit smaller productions and just grew from there. That was my experience.
I think you learn more by being in a room and just soaking up everything that you've got and figuring out how to, like, basically by assisting. I mean, I also started in undergrad. I also started as a performance major and dropped it. But I learned more being an apprentice or a PA and then an ASM than I ever learned in a classroom.
Agreed.
I have heard people say, if you want to be a director, start as a stage manager. Do any of you want to be directors?
I can only speak for myself. I could never do that because I don't have, I could never, I just want everyone to do great. I could never cast a show. I would be like, all of my children are lovely. I couldn't do it. I much prefer the stage management side of things.
I'm asked to direct all the time. I won't do it. I skip that. I'm an associate producer on a number of things. I went from stage manager, production stage manager to associate producer. So that was my route.
Yeah, that path makes more sense to me than jumping from
Yeah.
stage management to directing.
Mhm.
Yeah, we look at things differently. I'm looking, the things that I'm looking at when I'm watching a show, when I'm in a room as a stage manager, are not the same things a director is looking at.
Yeah. Agreed.
Interesting. Okay. Is there a place online to explore stage management talent in Atlanta?
No?
I don't think so. I would say just starting to look at the stage manager bio and programs. I mean, in a city like Atlanta, you're going to see the same names.
Come on, right. Come on. Come on. Come on.
I think there's like a line. My favorite part of Zoom is seeing everyone's animals.
It's okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's like a comprehensive database of
We're gonna come out.
stage management
Just give me-
anywhere.
Especially with the like theater to film pipeline, I feel like the stage management game, there's a very like, there's not a ton of people that, I don't know, that have been around as long as we have at this point.
We're gonna come out in a minute, okay?
Agreed.
Yeah.
So intimacy choreographers is a fairly new thing in theater for, at least for Atlanta. And so someone has asked, when did you start using intimacy choreographers? And did you used to do some of the safety aspects of intimacy yourself?
Post-COVID for me, I don't know.
I did a couple shows right before COVID that had higher level intimacy moments, which I would say more than just like a peck, something that was more involved in that. So I had worked with intimacy directors a couple times before COVID, but now I think it's very much across the board. Everyone's using.
I think it was not only post-COVID, but I think it was also after the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
Because the intimacy coaches didn't start really until after the Me Too movement.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, the newest thing on our horizon. Yeah.
Mhm.
That makes sense. If stage managers were eligible for an award, such as the Suzi Award, would it be a good framework for the theater to nominate them with a narrative of how they contributed to the show? Or what would you think would be the best way to weed out exceptional stage managers?
One clarifying question. Is that not what the call board award is, or is that also theater administrators? Are you saying you would want a much more like specifically stage manager only?
If there were a stage manager, and there could be clarity, Tony, you put this question in. Do you want to clarify?
Yeah, it is specifically meant to highlight the functions of the stage manager, and the person assumes that.
Oh, you broke up.
Can you hear me okay now?
Kind of.
Yeah, so I think some people probably aren't muted in the background maybe, but in any event, my question is specifically about an award for stage managers and the person that assumes that role.
Yeah, I mean, I think testimonials from the theater would be effective, but again, it is hard it's hard. Like, I think it's a pretty complex, because I see the following question about if there are no glitches, how can we tell the difference in quality? Like, sometimes shit just happens, pardon my French. So I don't necessarily think that a glitch in a performance would be a death knell, but I also, art is subjective. Yes, I think stage managers are creative, but I also think a lot of what we do is only seen by the people on that show, not necessarily the people in the audience.
And
Is
not
that-
always necessarily the people running the theater. Like,
yeah, because sometimes
I
it's
mean,
a
like,
acting
the
director.
director or run crew, or directors and run crew, like the actors maybe, but then
Yeah,
it's subjective too, because what actors think happened during a show and what run crew think happened during a show don't always line up.
right. I could see it becoming a popularity contest and not in a good way.
Right.
I'm just speaking in draft right now. And thank you for the clarification on the call board award.
So
Huh.
if someone hasn't muted, would you please do so? So we have about 7 more questions. I'm gonna try to get those and get us out of here because we're right at 8 right now. And but I would love, if people are interested, I want them to get some answers to their questions. So if there's a difference, Mike, if there's a difference of opinion regarding production, who would have the final say, the production manager or the stage manager?
It depends on, it depends on what it is.
You know,
Okay,
if a light designer is saying, I want to go over budget on equipment for my light design, that has to be approved by the production manager. You know, if it's a safety issue or a question about something that would impact the actors, and we as the stage managers have the most information there, I would say the production manager is required to take our professional opinion on that and their decision-making process. Thankfully, I've never encountered a production manager that was like, I don't care, we're making an actor do XYZ. So yeah, I think it's a case-by-case situation. The design elements itself, like what does the light cue look like? That's not up to us. That's the designer and the director collaborating.
so to answer some of the stuff about stage managers online, there's some, 7 Stages has something. Jen Jenkins apparently has a list for those people who know that. We've got a clarification on the call boards. Oh, that might be all of our, are there any final questions before we thank you, Yolanda. I'm just seeing your thing as I'm scrolling down. Jessica, were you raising your hand? No.
No.
Okay. So Tony has raised her hand, however. Go ahead, Tony.
I just wanted to thank the panel participants. This has been really enlightening. I mean, I've been in theater, professional theater and community theater since I can remember. So, but there are things that you guys have shared that I didn't fully understand. So this was really, really great. And of course, I want to thank our illustrious person here who put the whole thing on. Thank you, Brenda. So great job as usual. You guys were fantastic, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us.
We have lots of comments in the chat, thanking you folks. I would too like to thank you. I couldn't have asked for 3 better people to come in and share with us and enlighten us with most of what you do. There's still things you didn't even get a chance to talk about, I'm sure. And I appreciate your willingness to do that. Our next, for those people that are here with us, our next salon is in February. Right now it is scheduled for the 12th of February, which is a Sunday. And we believe that it will be on properties and all of the things that go along with that. So I would like to thank each of you for being here with us, as well as our panelists. Please continue to support this and take the opportunity to learn as much as you can about theater, so you can share that with others, and we can do what the Suzi's is meant to do: encourage excellence in the theater community in Atlanta. Thank you, Lark. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Emma. Your knowledge and your time is very, very valuable. And if there are no other things, I bid you all a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having
Yeah.
me.
For having me.
Thanks, Brenda.
Appreciate it.
Love you, Brenda.
I
It's
love you
only
too,
for
Miss
you.
Lark.
It's only
I
because
hate-
it's you.
You know, I owe you. When I come to New York, I'll do something
That's
special
right.
for you.
That's right. Love you, girl.
Love you, lady. We'll
Bye.
talk.